But Brandon, let's move on into our next team, and that is the Iowa State Cyclones. And for this one, very different. I don't think we've ever started a team preview off this year with one of these two positions. But we're talking about the offensive defensive lines to start this not this prediction, but this preview, because this is a team, an Iowa team that last year, coming into a new head coaching staff with Matt Campbell, they go 3-9. They're a team that, looking especially on offense, they're a team, they've got their quarterback with junior Jacob Park. They're loaded at running back and wide receiver. So really, to me, the big question mark, and this is the position I really want to start with, is the offensive line, because they are a team that I know you had mentioned to me before we started. They are losing 3 or 4 guys on that offensive line.
Yeah.
However, they're going to be getting back Jake Campos. He's coming back from a broken leg, the senior tackle. And then they have 2 young guys, sophomores Julian Good-Jones and Bryce Meeker, who those 2 need to step up along with the senior in Campos. This, to me, is the most important position because of what they lost and what they have. If this group, this 5 guys, can solidify, they have talent all over this offense to win a couple more games in 2017.
So, Ricky, I think a good way to kind of put where Iowa State is and has been is that the team overall, team runs pretty well. It's had some pretty good offenses over the years. It's been able to have some pretty good all Big 12 players. But looking at their conference, now not once it feels like have they been able to make a significant dent where they shoot up to the top like Oklahoma did, or as Oklahoma State has been rising to the top, and they're not going away. They're sticking around. They haven't been able to do that. Iowa State, what I remember Iowa State for is basketball. And the Fred Hoiberg,
the president,
Iowa State,
the president of Ames, or the mayor of Ames. That's what it was.
And that's how I remember Iowa State. It's very similar to the team we just got done talking about, Kansas. And that's I think probably the point for a lot of Iowa State and Kansas football players is that they're saying, well, we don't want to be that anymore. We don't want to be the team that people know us for our basketball. And when we say, oh, yeah, Iowa State football, oh, well, they've got a really good basketball team, don't they? Well, we want to be able to say they've got a good football team, too. But something's got to change, though. That's the problem, is that you've been mediocre. You've had, like I said, you've had some running backs that have come through that have been good. You've had some passing attacks that have been pretty strong. You've been able to do some things like that. You get guys mentioned, all Big 12 team. But it's not enough. It's not enough. It hasn't put you over that hump yet. And that's the point of trying to find your identity, and they're working on that now. But how much longer is it going to take as you see other teams fly past you to get to the top, as you see Texas, based on what they end up doing this year, you'd like to think that they'd be better and that they'd be moving back towards the top. Texas getting back there, and you haven't been there. And if Kansas jumps you, then is it going to be Iowa State at the bottom, or is it going to be Iowa State moving up along with Kansas up towards the top?
And I mean, when it comes to Iowa State, looking at their schedule from last year, we talked about some close games for Kansas. Iowa State had a ton of them, because basically how their season went was after starting 1-4, where they lose to Northern Iowa in a close upset game. Then they completely get blown out by fake ID specialists, according to Colin Cowherd, in the Iowa Hawkeyes. And then they lose on the road at TCU before winning against San Jose State. This was a team early on that just was getting decimated, except for that the San Jose and the Northern Iowa games. However, late in the year, they started catching their stride. They were competing with teams like, you look at the Oklahoma game. That was only a 10-point win for Oklahoma, who was ranked 14th at the time. Kansas, I know that's not a highly ranked team, but they beat them. They go ahead and beat Texas Tech, which is supposed to be a high-rate offense with Ryan Gosling's lookalike down there. They beat them 66-10. But then other close games. Kansas State, 31-26. Oklahoma State, going on the road to play them, only losing by 7 points and then losing by only 3 to Baylor at home. This is a Iowa State team that I am more confident than I was in Kansas of flipping the script a little bit and winning a few more games than they did a year ago. Because like I said, Baylor's going to be a question mark to me. Kansas State, that's a winnable game for Iowa State if they can catch them on a bad one. I still don't think you beat Oklahoma. I still don't think you beat Oklahoma State. TCU, they really blew you out. I mean, I guess them in West Virginia, you might have a chance, but I'm giving those two to them at this point. But I look at this team. You can beat Texas Tech, Kansas, Baylor, and maybe Kansas State. This could be a 4-win team in the conference part of things. The big thing is that non-conference, though. You get Northern Iowa again. They beat you last year. And then you get Iowa again. Yeah, Akron, you should beat them. But the thing is, on top of the 4 wins I had you in the non-conference, can you be a little ballsy and sweep your non-conference? Or at the least go 2-1 with a loss to Iowa?
Ricky, I'm sitting here and listening to you say these things and looking at what they have offensively, looking at what they have defensively, what they've got coming back, and kind of maybe some of the holes that they'll have to fill. 3-9 is not exactly what this team should be.
No, on paper they look a lot better.
Absolutely no way. No way that they should be 3-9. They should be much better with the quarterback that they have that cemented himself in that spot, especially last year. I mean,
they should at least be a 5-6 win team, maybe even 4 at the least.
Well, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you have a running back duo that could be one of the best in this conference. You have an all-star wide receiver who could be a very legitimate NFL talent. You've got a defense that's pretty solid. The part that I look at and go, all right, you're going to have to fill some holes, is that offensive line that you already talked about. Defensively, you have to fill a couple of holes with some guys that won't be returning. But you look at a secondary and a linebacking group, the secondary will be the strongest part of this defense, I believe. The linebacking core should be pretty solid. I think that, Campbell's got a lot of things to work with. And if these guys aren't able to produce, if we're not able to see more wins for Iowa State, then what's the problem here?
I got 3 guys, that, especially defensively. I like how you mentioned the defense, where I agree with you. Secondary and linebacking, secondary is probably the best unit on this defense. To me, like I've said, going back to the beginning, I'm going to be looking at the front 4. And to me, there are 3 guys coming in, all junior college transfers. You got Matt Leo, you got Ryan Lima, and you got Camilo Tungamoa. These guys were JUCO transfers that could have gone somewhere else. They could have played at a number of different Power 5 schools, but they chose the Cyclones. Why did they choose the Cyclones? It wasn't the record, I'll tell you that. It was the chance to get on the field early, to play sooner than they would at maybe other schools that were performing a little bit better. So to me, I'm looking at those 3 guys. Someone out of those 3 coming in needs to step up, needs to make this defensive front solid so that the linebackers and safeties and the corners, that secondary unit, can lean on that defensive front. This Iowa State team, I would not be surprised if they are a little better this year. Because, I mean, you look at their schedule, I already mentioned the non-conference, but it's kind of a flip of what it was last year, where you get Texas and Oklahoma up front. Cool. Those could be some tough opponents. I'm probably putting those as losses right now. But you get Kansas, they're at home. You get Texas Tech, yeah, it's on the road, but you should be able to beat them again. Your toughest stretch to me is TCU, West Virginia, Oklahoma. And then at the end of the year, yeah, it's 2 road games. That's probably the toughest part of this. But you get Baylor and then Kansas State. If you could win those last 2, I know they're on the road, but if you can win those last 2, maybe get to 4 wins. And then, like I said, it's all about the non-conference. What can you do there? Can you beat Iowa? Iowa's a big one. I was talking you guys up in the Iowa preview, and Iowa Hawkeye fans let me have it, that I was talking this Iowa State Cyclone team up. This team should be a lot better, though, than it was last year at 3-9. The question is, can they get everything going both offensively and defensively, and how are other teams in this conference going to perform?
Well, this Iowa State Cyclones team, much like the Kansas team, in my opinion, the first 3 games are winnable games, and you very, very realistically could start off 3-0.
Even at home again? I mean, is it because it's at home against Iowa?
Well, look at Iowa, Ricky. We've already talked about them. We don't necessarily. I thought that we were on the same page, but I do have to remember, it has been a little bit, that Iowa's not necessarily going to be anything uber special in the Big Ten. And I'm not saying that Iowa State is this uber special team in the Big 12, but I think that you do have the game at home. It's almost like in the sense of a Cubs-White Sox rivalry game. You know, you've got the Chicago teams. If you've got the home field advantage, that's a big thing. So for Iowa State to have the home field advantage there, I think that that's important. But at the same time, Iowa isn't the team that they were 2 years ago. Will they still be a team that gets 8 wins? Yeah, they should be. But I still don't see that why Iowa State wouldn't be able to come out and beat them. Both teams have a shot of winning that game. I don't think it's going to flop high one way or another. It could be 50-50 split of who wins that one.
That's a game where, in my mind, I have it in that sense, where it's a rivalry game, any given Saturday for that one. But the only thing that makes me nervous about that game and why I say either 3-0 or 2-1 is because of the past history with this. Last win that the Cyclones have against Iowa was 2014. And if we go back to 2000, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 wins in the last 17 years in this rivalry. And the thing that I kind of find a little humorous, it's a fun fact, another fun fact for these previews. All but, I want to say, 1 or 2 of these meetings where Iowa State has won has been more than 3 points. You had a 10-point win in 2000. You had a 3-point win in 2001. A 5-point win in 2002. That was the only other time they won more than 2 straight. 2005, that was your blowout, 23-3. But other than that, 2-point win in 2007, 3-point wins in 11, 12, and 14. This game's either going to go one of 2 ways, Brandon, in my mind. If it's a blowout, Iowa's winning this game. If it's a close game, the Cyclones are winning this game. That's the 2 ways I see it. Blowout, Iowa. Close game, Cyclones. That's what I've got going down.
And Ricky, I truly just don't feel like this would be a blowout. Only because I think that Iowa doesn't have necessarily the same weapons that it did at one point in these last couple of years. I mean, I know 2014 was when, like you said, the Cyclones were able to get that win, but in that time, Iowa's, 2015, 2016, they had some weapons there. They no longer have some of those same weapons, and I think Iowa State has kind of loaded up a little bit more. So it's a much more, I guess, maybe even playing field there, where it's a much more winnable game for Iowa State. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I think, Iowa State is all the way up here.
I keep wanting to do the same thing, Brandon. I keep wanting to do the same thing. You don't know how many times in my head I've paused for a second because I've almost said Ohio State. I've almost said Ohio State instead of Iowa State. So I've almost done the same thing you just did.
I said it instead of you saying it.
I got one question, though, for you.
I do want to continue and to finish the point.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish it off.
I think realistically, they can win those first 3. Will they? I'm not saying they will, but it's very realistic that they could. They come home against Texas. Texas with a very good quarterback in Shane Buechele. I like him a lot. I like their head coach, not as much as you do. You have a crush on him, but I like him as well. Then you go on the road against Oklahoma. We know that's going to be a tough one. So if you could end up 3-1 or even 4-0, before you go on the road against Oklahoma. That could be pretty good, sets a really good tone. Then after that, it's Kansas, Texas Tech, always a high-scoring affair with Ryan Gosling Jr. And then the rest of the season, TCU, one of those kind of a toss-up, I think. And Baylor, Kansas State, like you mentioned, with Baylor, Oklahoma State, a tough opponent, but it's interesting. Realistically, I do think that Iowa State could win 7 games. They could win 8 games. But at the same time, if things go, unfortunately, not so well, they could only win 4 or they could only win 5.
What year did you start college, Brandon?
2011.
2011. So the last time Iowa State was in the postseason was your second year of college. It was the year I graduated with my undergrad. It was the last time that this team was in the postseason.
You're an old man.
How did they do it? Funny story, exactly like you said. They went 4-1 in their first 5 games, winning 3, losing 1, winning the next. And then they won 2 more in that non-conference against Baylor and Kansas. The big thing, though, they got a big win that year over 13 TCU. And that was on the road. That was a big 37-23 win for them. I think Iowa State needs to have a similar season this year. If you're going to want to end this postseason drought, and I'm going to ask you the question of can they, but before I do that, I'll give my answer first. If you want to end this postseason drought, you have to, I'm going to say, go at least 3-0 in the start. If you could replicate what you did in 2012 and go 4-1 in your first 5, you're golden. Have a big win on the season, maybe against Texas, maybe even against an Oklahoma or an Oklahoma State. This is a team that I could see at the best sweeping their first 3, beating Kansas, beating Texas Tech, and then winning the last 2 at Baylor and at Kansas State to go possibly 7-6 wins. So this could be a prime year for me that this team could end its postseason drought. What do you think? Does Iowa State and the Cyclones end the postseason drought this year?
Postseason in the sense of a bowl game?
Yeah, a bowl game.
Okay.
Yeah. They're not. We're not talking college football.
I was going to say, I wanted to make sure you hadn't lost your mind.
A bowl game, postseason.
Could they end it this year?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, give me a minute here because I got to go through the schedule. I didn't have it in my mind of how many wins they actually were going to get. I told you how many they could get, but I didn't. Okay, so let's say they win the first 3.
Mm-hmm. Like you said, that they will.
Let's say they don't beat Texas. They win those 3. They beat Kansas 4. Let's say they get Texas Tech 5, TCU 6. Well, 5 these days is a bowl game. You know, this year might be even 4. We need to add another one.
We're just adding bowl games at this point. The most valuable podcast bowl.
The bowl.
Yeah.
Just so. Anyways, you're probably sick of us just talking here, but yeah, I think they have a very realistic shot of doing it because with what they have, again, you can look on a lot of things at paper and say, okay, this is going to be good, and then all of a sudden they get out there and they turn into the San Francisco Giants of this year.
Yeah.
But they can. They can. Offensively, they've got it. Defensively, they've got it. They've got a head coach who knows what he's doing. He's smart. He's talented. He's got the talent. If they can't do it, I would be disappointed because I know that they can. So I think that they have a very realistic shot to do so.
Well, this is where we're going to turn the question on to you guys. Cyclone Nation, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. What are you looking like coming into this year? Also, do you guys have what it takes to end your postseason drought? Let us know down below what you guys think down in the comment section.